just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Oregon versus Georgia provides us with a more competitive matchup. But, and I guess you could call, oddly enough, I'm not a big SEC supporter, but I have got a lot of SEC bias in this show. Georgia, while they lose a lot of defensive players, Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, they lose a lot of defensive players. They still return and reload because of how well Kirby Smart has recruited. They have a lot of dudes on that defense. A lot of dudes. Keely Ringo, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter. Just the three most important players, three of the more important players from last season. Some would argue three of the best players on that defense last year returning. This team's not going to take a step back. You lose George Pickens. They've got one of the best tight end rooms in the country, and they're facing off against Oregon in this first game. And frankly, I got to admit, like, Oregon was a strong team last year. They were inconsistent and they fell apart at the end of the season. Mario Cristobal jumps ship. Dan Lanning takes over. Dan Lanning has familiarity with Georgia, obviously being their defensive coordinator. That gives him an advantage trying to match up with this Georgia offense. He's not going to know what Georgia is going to come out with defensively because they have a new defensive coordinator. He's going to know how to maybe properly neutralize the guys that he coached up. But most importantly, he knows how to handle and very effectively neutralize Stetson Bennett, the starting quarterback. But this roster, to an extent, has holes at a lot of spots. I don't know how confident I am in their offensive line, but most importantly, I am not that confident in them defensively, and especially am not confident in Bo Nix. Bo Nix has been one of the most underwhelming and overhyped players in college football since he was a starter as a freshman. Ironically, he makes a name for himself in a game against Oregon, but since then, the guy has just underperformed in every level possible. His decision-making is not there. He runs in circles in hope of making plays. I don't think Bo Nix is the guy whatsoever. And I think this matchup, Georgia's defense, the dudes that they have on that defensive line, the guys that he's going to have to face in that secondary, it is a recipe for disaster for the Oregon Ducks. So in this game, I see Georgia winning pretty handedly by multiple scores. Georgia is a really freaking good program. One of the few teams in the country similar to Alabama that can just reload. That can just reload after losing multiple guys that get drafted in the first round.